This is Rocky Snyder. At the tone, leave your name and message and I'll get back to you.
Practically everybody in the state of Northern California is around this particular mountain waiting to see one Lane Meyer tackle this totally untamed slope, dead or alive. So get the lead out.
Welcome to this episode of the RockFit Files. I'm Rocky Snyder, and with me is Australian ski professional Tom Gellie. Now, not only is he a ski professional, but he's, of course, been through the anatomy and motion coursework, just like myself, only down under, which I don't think that takes anything away from it. It probably enhances it, but we're going to find out. Tom, welcome to the RockFit Files.
Thanks, Rocky. Good to be here.
It's good to have you. And now, for those in the Northern Hemisphere, we sometimes forget that our seasons are inverted to the Southern Hemisphere. So, for instance, right now, as we're recording this, we're getting into mid-November, and therefore we're entering your summer as we enter our winter. So your ski season has kind of come to an end in Australia, has it not?
It has, yeah. We don't have a very long ski season, but yeah, it's typically beginning of October. It's pretty much the snow's melting. I mean, yesterday was 31 degrees Celsius, beautiful day. The weekend, my wife and I spent the day with our little 3-year-old at the beach, and the water's getting really nice and warm now. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a nice summer, that's for sure.
That's great. Now, when I think about skiing, Australia, unfortunately, never comes to mind. I don't know why that is. Maybe I just go to Europe. I sometimes think of Japan. Of course, I live right near the California Sierras. So I've got Lake Tahoe within driving distance. And my home mountain is typically Squaw Valley, USA. Although I understand they're changing their name because these days that's not necessarily politically correct. So we'll have to find out. It's the ski resort that we love to go to in northern Lake Tahoe. But for you guys, you've got a few. You've got Perisher. You've got Mount Hotham. Do I pronounce that right?
Yep.
And then,
Hotham.
but where do you primarily work out of?
I used to primarily work out of Thredbo, which is right next door to Perisher, which is the biggest one.
All right. But you're not
yeah,
necessarily affiliated with any resort at this time.
Not anymore. No. I would say I'm now like in a contracting kind of role. Like it's funny. I this COVID period has either been really challenging to people, or it's sort of given them a kick in the bum to do something, that they've always wanted to do. I started a website called bigpictureskiing.com, and so now I coach people all around the world through videos on there about my perspective on skiing. And that also includes this sort of blending of, traditional ski technique understanding and then knowing about the body, which is, we could talk about that at some point, how that all began.
Well, I'd love to. Let's start there. Yeah. I would love to know how a ski instructor got involved with anatomy and motion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so for some reason, I have always had a deep kind of yearning to be in the mountains and ski. And like you said, funny Australian, it's not really around us. We're beaches and it's hot and all that sort of thing. So anyway, that was me. So after I finished university, studying something I didn't really want to use, it was more what my dad did. I think a lot of people can relate to that. You don't know what you do. Finished that, got it out of the way, parents happy. I went to Canada and did a season there and was like, this is what I want to do. So I became a ski instructor, and from that point in 2005, end of 2005, I started doing seasons back to back, going Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, and doing my levels in ski instructing. And yeah, just loved it. And then fast forward to 2010, and I met my now wife, who did the seasons things with me for a little while, but I soon realized I can't keep doing this. This is not really sustainable if I want to have a family and um, a life, a proper life together. So what am I going to do? I had no idea. I was like thinking about becoming a carpenter, because I didn't really want to go and do something sitting down. I wanted to use my hands, and I wanted to do something creative. And then this old housemate, she had just finished studying structural integration, or some people might know it as rolfing. And she said, "Oh, you should check this out." And I said, "You know what? I like a good massage, so sure." And I went and did a structural integration session with her, and it was amazing, because afterwards I walked out feeling different, and that was what caught me. I was like, our body can change from its position, like habits, or holding itself in a certain way, and then you can walk out, and without consciously changing anything, your body takes on a new form and way of moving. And I got to go ski that day, or the following morning, and my skiing felt better. It felt
Mhm.
more fluid. It felt more symmetrical, because at that point I was aiming. I'd been on the Australian demo team, which is like the top sort of instructors in your country go through a selection process to become the team that basically drives the technique of that association. So I'd been on that team once, and I was trying to get on it again. And so I was really focused on how my skiing looked symmetrically, how well I could change gears and ski at a very basic level, and then as fast and as exciting as possible. So I was like, wow, if I can go through this process of, changing my body to make it more efficient and work better, I can ski better. And I went, I'm going to be the guy who is the body guy, who knows about the body and how to change it to become a better skier. Because I'd had so many lessons with people where I'm like, you need to be able to, turn in your hip sockets better. You need to be able to feel this movement in your foot, and people just couldn't do it.
Aha.
And this, in my head, I'm like, wow, I could just like take this person, off the slopes, get their body moving better, and say, this is what it's like when you want to edge, or change into a new turn, or ski over a bump, and then like almost like inject that ability back into their system, and then go and teach them. It was like I just had felt there was something missing, because I'd felt it myself, because coaches had told me, hey Tom, you need to change your left foot turn, you're not standing in the same place on your right. And in my head I'm doing exactly the same thing. I didn't think I had anything wrong, because we feel that perception of where your alignment is. And then I'm doing drills, wouldn't change, but structural integration gave me this like light bulb and this insight into it's possible to change. And forever and a day, that drives my passion for all the clients that come in here, all the people that I teach, is that you can change. The body is totally able to do that. It's just about finding that little entrance, that key that unlocks the way into being able to do that.
How
So
was that received within the ski community? Because traditionally, you're going to go see a ski coach who's going to just be working on technique. Like you say, we've got to find your body here. You got to get your knees at this position. You got to get your head over here. But you're doing something that is seemingly quite different than everybody else, which is you're taking the just overall biomechanics of the human frame and then applying them onto the ski slope once you've gotten them into a more structurally integrated, balanced place.
yeah, well, I mean, it was received really well, I think, because I mean, my take on skiing and technique was, there's a bit of a lack of understanding of biomechanics and the body. And I think I was thirsty for that kind of information. And And so it was received really well. But not only just knowing, like being able to explain your ankle does this and that, like that's one part, but then being able to like give people the feeling of what that is like what really good pronation of your foot feels like, what a supinated foot does with pressure coming through the ski, like the difference in rigidity and stiffness to get rebound out of a turn, um, the awareness of where your arms are and your head is and your spine is as you ski through undulating rough terrain. Those things I think were kind of lacking, and basically people just get there eventually because they do, you just slowly figure it out, right? You do thousands, or you're gifted, you like
Right.
you're a good surfer. I'd say it wouldn't take, and you probably ski a bit, and you probably don't find it too hard, but other people who are not there, they don't have things to draw upon. Like you have surfing all your life to draw upon feelings of like leaning into a turn, of feeling pressure under your feet, of how your hands direct and help that board turn further. And like you can make parallels between
Quite.
these
Yeah.
sports. Yeah. And so I was trying to figure out how to help the people that didn't have that.
Yeah.
So
That and there's some irony here that we haven't spoken of, because Gary Ward, who developed the anatomy and motion coursework, which we'll delve into also, started by learning how to create orthotics and ski boots in the Alps, and then just took that information and went into the fitness world, rehabilitation world, all of that. But I haven't heard anybody kind of take it back up onto the ski slopes itself until our paths have crossed. So I love that kind of that journey, and the fact that an idea kind of originated on the mountain. It took its journey all over the course of the world, but now it finds itself back up on the mountain. So you did Ida P. Rolf's work, structural
yep.
integration. You followed that, and I'm sure got licensed, certified as a Rolfer, and started working with that. So, and that just opened up your doors of perception, let's say, uh,
Yeah.
your ideas. So, where did AIM come into
Come
play?
in. Well, I mean, I think like structural integration, a lot about what you learn is kind of looking at posture, standing pretty still. There's no motion and movement, or not much. I think Ida Rolf had a very good feel for that, but she only really taught it in this kind of therapy sort of sense in a room. So I was trying to figure out how you take all that into something like skiing and movement. So I knew there was missing information there. And for whatever reason, I think you can probably testify to this. When you really want to know something, the people that can help you find out those things just somehow appear through, you
Yes.
put the thought out there, and those things come to you. So it's a pretty interesting story. I think it was on a podcast listening to David Weinstock, NKT, sort of the guy NKT developed NKT. He talked about, at the end, someone said, "Oh, what are you playing with?" He said, "Oh, I'm playing with this thing, anatomy in motion, because it's really interesting, like foot pronation." And my ears went ding, because I knew in skiing you needed to pronate, and everyone is all about, outside of that, don't, like a pronated foot is a bad thing. When I heard him saying that someone's talking about it as a good thing, I went, I need to find out about this guy. So then I, scoured the internet and found videos about him. And one of the first things I found was, I don't know if you've seen this, but he has this video that he created in 2009 where he works with a rock climber and a guy who does 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents. Have you seen that video?
Yes.
Yeah. So I found that video and I was like, wow, this is the guy that's going to help me figure out how I can help sort of have a similar idea with skiing. So I found every single piece of information I could about Gary Ward on Facebook, on Vimeo, on YouTube, on podcasts, and I like just devoured it and shredded it apart. I think I watched that video, I don't know, 400 times, trying to figure out, like, he's like doing some of the aim exercises. And so I already started trying to play with them, because then I ordered What the Foot. He talks about the exercise in the book. And at this stage, he hadn't arranged a course in Australia. So I was like, do I go? Like, I'm not going to spend some money. I've already, like, I can't fit in with my skiing instructing schedule. Anyway, so I found every piece of info, and if he's listening, he used to put on, like, when he ran some courses, he would put on recordings, like hour-and-a-half recordings of, say, a discussion about propulsion. And I think you paid $20, and maybe the people that did the course, they had a code that made it free or something. But I was like, bam, paid it, and then studied this video about propulsion. And then a month later, another one come out, shift phase, bam, buy it. So I'm absorbing all this info. And so funny, at the same time, Rob Sawyer, who is another Aussie guy who's now doing a lot of the drawings and artwork.
Now. Yes.
Yeah, the AIM artist, incredible artist. He and I connected at an NKT course in Melbourne, and he saw me mucking around doing what was like some kind of transition. And he's like, you're into AIM? And I was like, yeah. He's like, me too. He's like, and he's like, what do you know about like this phase and that phase? It's like, well, I think the big toe should be doing this, and I think you got to rotate that way, but I'm not really sure. And he's like, yeah, I'm not really sure about that too. And so anyway, we then started trading, like, over like FaceTime. Like, we'd talk to each other and muck around trying to do these things and share insight we had on things. And, oh, did you see this post with Gary, talking about fixing someone who'd, broken their fibula bone? And he's like, yeah, I did. And so we would work together and start figuring it out. Anyway, so the course finally comes to Australia. Rob and I sign up. We get to the course, and basically he and I have, like, I don't know, 75% of the flow motion model figured out before he'd even presented it. And so, like, he's presenting this thing, and like most of the other people in the room, this is the first time they've come across it. I know in the other podcasts you hear of people like, it's like a total game changer. Well, Rob and I have spent, like, I don't know, 9, 12 more months, like, totally in it with no support, just trying to figure it out. So we're like, get past that boring stuff. Like, we want to know, like what is the cuboid doing in 3 planes? What is the collarbone? And so we're, instead of that course being just trying to get the fundamentals of, okay, like the calcaneus and the pelvis and the head all go in anterior tilt in suspension, we're like past that, looking at all these other things. So it was like the best course, honestly, I'd ever taken, because I think it was like being given the map. Like, Rob and I are there running around, like, trying to figure things out, and that was, like, I think, an amazing, awesome experience and such a good way to learn. But then we were given the map, and then all this other stuff, and Gary being a skier and starting with ski boots, he and I, like, really got along well, and I was like, this is it. And I told him I wanted to figure out, like, the ski motion model, basically, how you would, like, map every joint for different phases of a ski turn, and write that down. And I'm still sort of working on that and have a pretty good idea in my head, but it's definitely a bit different. At first I was taking more of, like, trying to fit like a square peg in a round hole type thing, but they're different. They're skiing and gait are different. And it was really good trying to, see what is similar, like, because there's definitely a shift phase where you're changing, like, your weight from one foot more predominantly to the other. There's a pronation phase, there's a supination phase. Yeah, that's been awesome now, trying to plot how yeah, all the joints work to make a ski work, to make you go down the hill in control.
Well,
So
I'm
yeah.
curious, Tom, because I hear what you're saying, that it's really good to understand the joint mechanics of any sport, competition, movement. Yet the fundamental bedrock is how do they go from point A to point B in regards to their gait cycle. So, do you find that you need to veer away from the phases of gait in that fashion so that you're more ski specific? You know, if you find restrictions in some ski related motion, do they have a tendency to clean up between the aim work and the structural integration? Or are there episodes with a client where you're going, okay, well, I actually have to get them much more in a specific position related to skiing?
Yes, I think there is some crossover, and at first I thought that if I fix, say, their suspension phase, like a particular phase in their gait on their right foot, that would help. They would just take that into their skiing, and straight away it would work better.
Yeah.
So that would sort of happen sometimes with people that were pretty good athletes, but other people know. And it's because there is like one big difference about skiing is that is this lateral motion. Like walking is very forward, like, you know, like to make it simplified, like we're kind of falling forward a little bit, catching ourselves and redirecting mass and that sort of stuff forward. Skiing, you don't actually really, like, you're moving forward, but it's because you're sliding, but you are moving a lot laterally, like
Gotcha.
way over. And that, in human life, there is not much else you can relate to that you move that far over, like maybe speed ice skating. And you think, how many people do that? Like they lean really far over. Like even in surfing, like you never have your board over like at 70 degrees edge angle. And so that's the biggest thing I guess I'm working on trying to explain and help people experience, which would be akin to like a child when they learn to walk. The biggest thing they do is they let go of like what they're holding on to and learn to fall forward and trust that they're going to catch themselves. So in skiing, you got to learn to fall laterally, and centripetal force through the skis turning, that holds you up. And it's learning to trust all that and then put all your joints in a way that you're, you know, you're toppling in a controlled way, not too fast, but sort of slow and with certain parts, and then getting the ski to literally like catch you a split second later in the turn and keep you from putting your bum on the ground and sliding out uncontrollably.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've often thought of frontal plane lateral motion in regards to one, there are fish muscles. You know, prehistorically, we at one point in time would slither through the water before we had limbs, and those muscles are still existing, except now that we do have limbs and move, they take on a different path, like a very restricted shifting of weight from one leg to the other as we try and go a straight line. And when we talk about how we manage the mass of our body, the sagittal plane and transverse plane can both send force forward and backward, but the frontal plane is like, it's like the bastard stepson. It's like it's out of the loop there. And it's no wonder in my mind that people struggle so much with the frontal plane because one, we don't move as much in that fashion, and it's not a way that we manage our mass forward and backward like we can overwhelm the sagittal plane with transverse or vice versa. So that's kind of left off. I mean, do you find that people struggle the most with frontal plane on average than they do with the other two?
I would say, as a gross overstatement, yes,
Yeah.
because of what you said. Um, and even Ida Rolf talked about it. Like there's this third session in the structural integration series where you basically work the sides of the body, and she sort of makes this statement that we really have very little awareness of the sides of our body. Like we present ourselves like, you know, on the front of our body, like the back of the body people see and stuff, where it's at another place it's not awareness, but the size of the body is like really very little awareness there. And it's funny now, like thinking about it, like all the sports and things I love doing are frontal plane. I
Tennis.
love like no, more like and less like riding a bike, riding a skateboard, riding like skis, kiteboarding, right? They're all, even rock climbing, you know, sideways and up, and I'm like less inclined to do things like running and that sort of thing. Like I like it when the body has to go sideways. I find that really fun. There's a lot of like freedom in letting gravity pull you down, and then but then coming out of that position. Like in your surfing this morning, like did you have any good cutbacks?
Yes.
Yeah. And is that like the best feeling?
It's the best. It is
Yeah.
just making the bottom turn or cutting back, feeling that centrifugal force and that whip around and that
Yeah.
moment of weightlessness. You know, that's kind of like if you could pick out, okay, I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours. Do you have a
Yeah.
favorite phase in the gait cycle? Like if you were to when you were studying it, when you're exploring it, was that one that just blew your mind more than any else, or you adhere to? Like which one do you have an affinity toward?
Shift phase.
Shift. That makes complete sense. That is
Yeah.
so cool. For me, it's transition. It's like all hell breaks loose, but for that one moment, everything comes back together before the big bang occurs again. It's like that, just that moment. But I can feel that shift is that weightless sensation, like that
Yeah.
carrying over just the moment before again, like you just have to come to grips with reality and gravity and everything else. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And but I think like the transition shift together, it's that, it's like spinning and falling, like we all really love that, you know. We love going down like slippery slides, you know, bungee jumping, skydiving, jumping into a pool, like that feeling where gravity, you just let it take you. It's just to what level you really want to play with that kind of like sort of risk is what we love. So yeah, I love gravity. I love playing with gravity and thinking about that as a force that is always like fueling my system. Like how can I tap into it and let it like act on me for a bit longer, because I know then I'll have more force to work with to either get a result, you know, upwards jumping, sideways, whatever it is. So yeah.
I'm curious, what aspects did you struggle with the most once you got into the workshop? I mean, you were struggling and piecing it together on your own with the help of Rob Sawyer, but once you got there and got through it, and were there things that created a struggle for you, whether it's in your own body or just the concepts themselves or the application of the work?
Do you know what I reckon it is now? And it'll lead into a good topic, like what I'm so fascinated with now is it's how to get other people to feel it, because I got it, I feel it, and I think it's because I'm a very like active movement type of guy. Like I love sports. Like my dad is still super fit. Like we would go bushwalking so much in our lives. Like I grew up on a bush block with like all this wilderness behind me. My brother and I would go out, climb trees, build stuff like for hours. My mum and dad wouldn't know where we were. So I think being in my body is quite natural. But then I struggled with like, why are other people not like that? So it's communicating a feeling and a sense of how good movement feels to others. That was the thing. And so like for a long time I've been trying to figure that out, and then that's why I fall back on using like the structural integration, because I can physically put it in there, but then communicating it now, say through my website, skiing website, I can't touch people and be there in person, and even like like helping them with their body and postural movements, I have to communicate it with words. And so just recently, it's brought me to metaphors. And so, okay, and so think about this. You come across anatomy in motion, and one of the main like concepts in it is this idea of cogs, right? And cogs are a great metaphor because they're saying the body is like cogs, or these joints are like cogs. And we learn, like I've sort of found this out through a bit of research, like we have to have something that we can relate to that we already know in order to make the jump easy in learning something new. If it's completely foreign, if you can't find, if someone doesn't have an affinity with cogs, even cogs are meaningless. Whereas for you and I, it could be like, bam, I get it. Like these teeth meshing and it being in synchronization and it not being in synchronization, there being problems. So learning that metaphors is how the human brain basically processes things. Like it's the way we think. It's not even language. It's actually a thought process. Has really brought me to now focusing on like all my efforts on being a master of metaphors and master of creating that kind of imagery. So anyone that comes across, whatever their background, I can wiggle my way into what imagery, what things they can relate in their life to in what I'm trying to explain. And it's fascinating, like listening to this professor from Stanford the other day talk about analogies and metaphors being, his title of the talk was analogies as the core of cognition. And his whole speech, he basically talks to the fact that nearly everything is we learn through metaphors. And my son is 3 years old, like now realizing everything he's asking me, he's trying to compare to what he knows. He's like for instance, dinosaurs. Like there's no dinosaurs today, but he loves, like kids love dinosaurs. So he's always asking, Dad, is T-Rex as big as that house? What about Brontosaurus? Is it bigger? And then he's like, and who's scarier? Is T-Rex scarier or is Allosaurus scarier, right? He's trying to categorize everything and figure it out, what's like what and what's not like it, but you know, the differences here. Yeah. And so like, this is a really cool thing to do, and listeners can try this too. Really be aware of your next conversation, particularly if it's with someone younger, and notice how much they will communicate with you using metaphors and analogies, and their questions are around that because they're trying to get information off you about how everything fits together in this world.
I love it.
Yeah, I was having fun listening to your podcast, these other ones, and I'm counting because apparently we think in about 6 metaphors a minute.
Wow.
And so I was testing, like especially with Chris Shridham's episode, there was one section where there's about 20 seconds of talking and he used maybe 8 metaphors. Right? And so it's everywhere. So when you start paying attention to it, you start really noticing it. And then like what you really notice is the good metaphors, the ones that are really rich and are not overused. Like you know, like someone says, oh, you hit the nail on the head with that one. Like you've heard that so many times. So it doesn't really have that. You don't really think of the hitting the nail on the head and what's going on. You just know like straight away what it is. Whereas if it's a really creative one, like, you know, you hit that nail through the boards into the other boards so well that everyone in the crowd looked at your incredible ability as a carpenter. Like, you know, that's so different to hitting the nail on the head.
Right.
So yeah, so
it's really a lot of what you're saying too is what I'm experiencing is the next level of coaching is actually the cueing, the verbal cueing, and how can you create a mental image? How can you create a connection with the brain and the interoception or the body's ability to know where it is and to just get them to a higher level of awareness through verbal cues.
Exactly. Because I'd sort of written down before we were to chat, like I was like, I want to make sure I mentioned this. And so say in assessment, we're in anatomy motion, we're taught like the assessment of, like moving the body, anterior tilt the pelvis, posterior tilt it, hike it, drop it, rotate it left, rotate it right. And so say like you would probably get this, you get people that come in and all those things you could actually put a tick in, yes, they can do all those things. But then next to it, you might say, but the anterior tilt is like their hip joints are rusty, and their posterior tilt is like their hip joints are greased, and then the hike and the drop, like one side, like the right hike is shy, or it's confident, like these words start coming out. And when you give your clients the permission to like talk in this way, you get so much more info instead
So
of
much
trying to, yeah, instead of saying, can you hike your hip, can you drop it? No, this is what I mean by hike or drop. Just like kind of let them describe what's going on in their own analogies, and you'll get so much more rich information. Like oh, I flex my neck left and it's painful. And instead of just writing down, oh, it's painful, you go like how? And they're like, oh, it's sharp. You go like sharp, like a tack, or sharp like the end of a pencil, or sharp like like a zap of electricity. And they're like, oh, so you get more info from that instead of stopping at the sharpness, and you keep going, and then that starts them processing and realizing, instead of like, ow, it's painful, they start thinking, why is it painful? Is it painful because I'm compressing? Is it painful because I'm compressing onto a pointy bit, or am I compressing a structure that is being squashed like in between two hard bits, or like just so much more information. That's what you need, I think, as a practitioner, and the client needs to know to move beyond it.
And I think that the term interviewing the body is really true to that point. Is that between every question there exists space for another question, and there exists space between those two. And if you can continually ask the body and the person questions and interview them in the fashion that you kind of just described, then, like you say, you're going to get so much more rich information. And it's interesting that as soon as we choose to skip over to this question, then over to the next, we are missing so much more information between those questions that it's really something. I agree that when working with somebody, by giving them the ability to use descriptive words to, I typically say, break out your Roget's thesaurus and really give me some adjectives as to what you're feeling, or give me an image, like just what does that feel like? Do you feel when the pelvis tilts anteriorly and posteriorly that it's on a pivotal point and it's just teetering? Or do you feel like one is having to pull it in a direction and the other one falls aside? Like, can you ask them these questions? What does that seem to be doing there? And how is it that you're doing it is another great question. Okay, you're going to the side with your pelvis. How do you feel that's going compared to when you go to the other side? Oh, well, I noticed that this hip is getting up higher, but it doesn't do the same on the other side. Or, oh, I feel like I'm running into kind of a cardboard wall here, but I could keep on going on the other side. It's like you ask those questions, and before you know it, they start to feel so different just by having that awareness of how they move or where they struggle to move. It's quite something. So you've been
Yeah.
doing this for how long?
So like running a like a physical therapy kind of, or I call myself a body alignment therapist, doing
Okay.
that since 2013, so 7 years, and then ski instructing since 2005. And I think they're very similar. You know, like I could make metaphors between the two. Like, um, so I feel like the ski instructing gave me a very good eye. Like I really, I rely a lot on my eyes because I've really been drawn to studying movement and motion. And in skiing, it's really quite complex, and people have done it to such a high level. Like there's such precision in where your hands are, your body, your feet, your knees, um, you know, at these high speeds and changing terrain, that you have to really train your eye in order to coach someone onto the next thing in their progression. So that eye has really helped my practice indoors, because someone's now just standing there, they're not moving that far, they're not moving that fast. So I've helped hone it in. But then that's also helped further, because then I can see details that then when I go back out skiing, I can see things that I don't think other people see, because I can see the skeleton skiing now, not this bright purple jacket and blue pants, you know, blurring. I can, I really try and see a skeleton skiing.
Yeah, now that's great, because that leads me into another area I'm curious about, and I've experienced myself, like in the earlier days of learning movement as well as structural integration, you were looking at a body with fairly new eyes, with unexperienced eyes for the most part. But over time, through 2013 up until now, there are subtle and maybe not so subtle landmarks that you hit where your eyes take on more information than previous. And for instance, not looking at the entire ski outfit and just now being able to penetrate as to what the skeletal frame is, layering back the soft tissue and seeing what the bones are doing, or looking at the body as a whole and understanding how the mass of different segments are starting to relate to one another based on how it's moving. So have you noticed those landmarks, and how long has it taken you to get to a point where you're going, ah, okay, I see what's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a process of that getting better and better. Like, uh, back to the metaphors thing. Like, you know how the models. Like, I've got a model foot here, a model skull, a model pelvis, a model over there, like shoulder girdle, wrist, hand, like posters of anatomy everywhere. They're all metaphors. They're not like that model foot is not my foot yet. When I hold someone's foot, and I've held and played with the model foot so much, I can go, oh, that's like my model foot in this way, but it doesn't move in a way that I know a model foot should, or those joints, you know, at the calcaneus talus area should move. And so being surrounded by all these things and then constantly testing myself to check it, then going out on snow and other places, I can start to use those as analogies. This, like, how is that moving compared to, like, even over there, a friend drew a picture of a skier like right over on their edges, but it's a skeleton. And so, like, I've like almost like project that on top of someone skiing and pause them and go, that doesn't fit. Like, what are they doing? That inside knee is internally rotated, not externally rotated as it's flexing. I know that doesn't fit. And so, like, yeah, just learning to hone in on those areas that don't fit this overall like broad skiing skeleton, and then that draws you in, and then so then you investigate it further. And yeah, I think it just takes time, and I think people just need to surround themselves with these other models that are like, they are not the same, but they are very like it, and they're stripped back so you don't have as much confusing information. Like, it is confusing to look at a skier with their clothing on, and then their layer of skin and their layer of muscles and their layer of bones and everything underneath. But if you can just take it all away and compare it to only one system, the skeletal system, our brain can find it's much easier on our brain. So
And so when you work with a client, do you ever, whether it's for your own amusement, entertainment, or to bring about awareness of what it is you're doing with them in regards to the client, do you ever go through assessments and then have a conversation with the skier saying, based on what I'm seeing, you're most likely having a hard time making these turns, or any element in skiing, how it relates to certain techniques going downhill based on what you see with their foot or their hip or their entire structure? Do you say, okay, so how long have you been struggling to do this on the mountain? Do you ever do that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I do, and I think that's my way of trying to piece together. Because, but I don't assume. I don't try and be smart and go, "Oh, I bet you don't turn well to the left,"
Gotcha.
because I remember doing that a few times, and they go, "No, it's to the right." And so it's more. I try and be humble and go and gather information that I can then put in the back of my head and go, "Well, 7 out of 10 people with a stuck pronated foot find the turn to the right really hard, but the other three don't." And so I'm always like the probability wise, maybe. So I'll ask, "Oh, do you find it this way is easier or the other way easier, and why is that?" Because it might be, as like the reason it's pronated could be because you broke something. The other reason could be because you're trying to get away from the other side, and so then there are different reasons why one turn would be better
Sure.
than the other. So yeah, but I'm always interested in those things because I am trying to build a catalog and a memory database that then the people in the future, I can then metaphorically compare like to like, and how, what is there similarities here, and um yeah.
I love it. So now that you're married with a family and you're not going from one hemisphere to the other and you're entering the summer months, does the summer take you and your work? Because the ski slopes have closed down for the season. What are you just
Yeah,
continually seeing people on the off season, or do you
well,
set your
I
sights
think
toward more water sports or something like that?
I think I should clarify, like the people that I see in this practice in here, I don't know, maybe 5% are skiers.
Okay.
I just see like 2-year-olds to 85-year-olds, same as you, just like a real broad selection of the public. And then I sort of, I guess, have the other skiing side, like I have Skype sessions with, or Zoom sessions with skiers mostly, because like Sydney's not a massive ski hub. Like a lot of my skiing clients are from America and Canada and Europe, so that's all sort of done on the internet. So that's that bit first. So I'm mostly seeing the general public here, which is a really good, nice mixture.
Now, how long
But
have you been doing the Zoom sessions with clients?
oh, since like I don't know, 2015. Like I got into it early. Yeah, just when people asked, I was like, sure, I'll try. And at
Did
first,
you
a lot of
notice,
them was,
did
go
did
ahead.
it help you with your own verbal cueing and coaching because you couldn't put
Definitely.
your hands on them?
Yep, definitely. And I think that's why, those challenges, you either embrace them or not. And I think you always learn a lot from taking on a challenge. So yeah, I've been doing that for a while, and I really enjoy it. And now I think, like Monica was saying, she really enjoys like the group sessions. And I've been doing a lot of like sort of webinar based sort of like lessons, or sessions where there's a theme, like so you've kind of got a bit of a topic that you center around that you can always veer away from, but at least there's a central theme that everyone knows that's what we're kind of revolving the movement or the discussion around. So I'm really enjoying those. So actually, there's the next webinar I've got in a couple of weeks is about metaphors. So I'm really looking forward to that one, and just passing on all this stuff I've found out about it, and that people should really start paying a lot more attention to the language they use, the language that other people use. Like when people fight, like argue, it's because their metaphors don't match. They're like, they can't see from the other person's perspective what they're kind of relating everything to. So yeah, that's really interesting.
Mhm.
But yeah, your question about the summertime, I would usually be going somewhere or a few places like Japan and Canada or America in January and February and March. If it wasn't a COVID year, like last year, I spent a week in Japan doing some training for a really small ski school over there, and then went to Aspen for 2 weeks with the family and did some training for the Aspen ski school. That was awesome. So did a couple of indoor lectures about the feet and skiing, and then did some on snow stuff. And like I'm now doing some work with the Canadian Ski Instructors Alliance, and their sort of system is evolving, and it's looking like in the future there could be some workshops I could do with their system. And there's a company in London that make a digital insole called Carve, and basically the insole is like a pressure. So your pressure sensor mat, it's like that, has 24 sensors underneath it, and it also tells you like roll, pitch, and yaw, speed, all sorts of things, and it's hooked up to an app on your phone. And I'm working with them to develop the like delivery of tips, because this is a great diagnostic. You've got one of those pressure sensor mats.
Yes.
Yeah. So amazing diagnostic, but no good if you've got all this great info and you don't know what to do with it.
True.
It's like, then how do you then deliver some information, have some input to then get them back on this thing and see a change? So I'm working with this company to help develop that side of it, which is why I've become really interested in the metaphors and the coaching and, internal versus external cues. Like, what's the best way to coach people? So this summer I'll be working on that and be given a sort of a pilot group of skiers to run through, like, can we really, like, the goal is, can we really change these people's skiing given like their starting metrics of edge angles and pressure under their foot and all those sorts of things, pressure smoothness, and then can we create a bit of a pathway and a process that changes all that to be improved and better without me actually being there. So that's really
exciting.
exciting. Yeah,
Very.
big game changer. Like, imagine you went out surfing with these like booties that had that, and would be able to tell you like the speed that you made that cut back at, and the board edge angle, and how many turns you made like in an hour's surfing session. And then you go and do something, you buy a new board and you see like all these things changing, like, that's why I like that board for these days and that board for that day. And right, it's so like technology now combining that is really interesting. So
Fantastic. Well, we're up against the clock. This hour has flown by faster than I was expecting. It was such a joy. Now, if people want to look into your services, whether it be Zoom or if they happen to be in the Sydney, Melbourne, New South Wales area, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so for the practice where you come and see me in person in Sydney, it would be looking up functionalbody.com.au. So you can find more info there and book sessions there. And then for skiing related stuff, it's bigpictureskiing.com. And, you can even get a free video, like, to see what a carving lesson from me is like. And then it's a subscriber sort of membership based thing. But I've got like over 60 hours and counting. I've got all these videos I need to edit and add, and it's had some like that. That's the most enjoyable thing, is like this morning on the bus into work was a message from someone just saying, they subscribed back in May thinking like they'd just try it for a month and consume all the content and then cancel. And they're like, still they have no intent to stop, and their skiing has improved from all the online content. This is someone in the UK.
Wow.
Who's like in their late 50s, And so that just drives me to, like, after we finish this call, I'm back on to creating more content for that site. So yeah, if people are interested, I'd love them to check that out and
Tom,
see what
that's
it's
great.
about.
Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you spending some time with us in between your content building. And I look forward to somewhere along the line, whether it's in an AIM workshop or on a ski slope, we'll have to carve some turns together. Now, I don't think ill of me, but I'm a snowboarder. Not a
Oh, no. I used to be as well. I've done it all
There-
because yeah, totally.
whatever
And
board, as
if
long
not
as
a
there's
ski
a
slope,
board and I can ride it, I'm good. Skate, skis,
yeah,
whatever. All right,
yeah. No, awesome. Thanks very much, Rocky, for having me.
my pleasure.
If you'd like to find out more information about the flow motion model, anatomy and motion courses, or Gary Ward himself, pick up a copy of his book, What the Foot, at findingcenter.co.uk. And while you're at it, pick up a copy of my book, Return to Center, where I take the flow motion model and apply it to strength training and conditioning. You can get a copy of that at rockysnyder.com. Thanks for listening.